I want us to focus on something that is happening tomorrow and that is of great significance here in Kenya. President Uhuru Kenyatta making his third State of the Nation address. He will be telling the country, what his administration has achieved over the last 3 years, maybe more specifically over the last year, since he made his last State of the Nation address March 26, 2015. There has been that interministerial symposium. In fact, Kenya's Deputy President William Ruto addressed the nation yesterday. They called it Delivery at 3. That was a hashtag that was trending on social media yesterday. But what do the people really think? So, we are the first right here on KTN News to have these numbers for you. It's from the Tunaweza Sauti za Wananchi poll that was conducted in the country just a few days ago. So let's take a look at what it says. Well, these are some interesting findings and we'll be discussing them in just a moment. So this is one of the questions that was asked. They were asking the respondents what the most serious problems facing Kenya were, in their opinion. So take a look at this corruption. Of course, there have been a number of scandals in the country, ironically, since the president's last State of the Nation address, where he heavily addressed the issue of corruption. 18% of them say corruption is the biggest problem. The high cost of living is also of great concern, as well as lack of employment. Now, I want you to take a look at the converse. These are the ones that ended up on the bottom of the file. Remember, things like insecurity and terrorism were top of mind of Kenyans not too long ago, but not so today. 1% of those who were asked in this survey said just 1% of them cared about insecurity, another 1% in land issues. And this has been a big one in terms of the conversations we've been having with the certain accusations that the president isn't following the rule of law in the country. Just 1% care about the implementation of the constitution as a serious issue facing the country today. So even after all that, then, how well do they think the government is performing in helping solve some of these issues that they feel are important? In terms of the creation of jobs, how well do the people think that the president has handled, or the government has handled, creation of jobs? It's not looking good, folks. Badly. 63% of the people who are surveyed think the government is doing a bad job of creating jobs. Just about 7% said the government is doing very well in that respect. I want to show you just one more set of data because I'm teasing this out. Remember, at 9 p.m. here on KTN Prime, we will be going big with some of these just so we get the citizens' perspective, even as we await the president's perspective on his own performance tomorrow. Now, here's how they feel the government is performing in solving the issue of the economy. Please remember last year there was a cash crunch of sorts. There's the Eurobond issue. Some of these were meant to ease the burden on the taxpayers. Again, not doing very well. 61% of those who were surveyed said the government is doing a bad job at managing the economy. Again, just 7% said they're doing very well. 27% said somewhat well. Maybe if you put those two together, I'm not the pollster, but let's talk to the pollster himself. Senior Program Manager, we want to speak to him. That's Victor Rateng from Tunaweza. They're the ones who have conducted this poll. I want to talk a little bit more about this. What do these numbers mean in that respect? Victor, thanks. It's good to have you here on Bottomline East Africa.
Thank you.
So what do these numbers tell us?
Even the baby is 3 years old and things are bad. The baby is ill because the things that the government promised don't seem to be doing well in the minds of Kenyans. So you have just read the figures out there, and you've talked about managing the economy and creation of jobs, for example. We had the president, deputy president last night say that they have created 800,000 jobs. Well, that's a good thing. That those numbers look big,
but the people aren't feeling it.
Well, how many people have actually left institutions of higher learning since 2013?
Okay.
Do you know how many are actually joining the labor market? Are they being absorbed? So we are in a situation where we are just feeding a small segment of the population in terms of creating these jobs. So when the deputy president says that we have created even 1 million jobs, he needs to bear to know or to remember that there are so many youth out there. Kenya is a youthful population. 70% of this country is youthful, and the unemployment rate in the country is more than half. That is about 50%, which means that of the eligible population that is supposed to have jobs, half of them do not have. So that number then becomes insignificant when put into perspective.
When you take a look at it, and perhaps with, all of these questions we've been asking, is it a matter of perception? Do you think it's the government perhaps not communicating their achievements and their successes? Or are people simply just not feeling it? I mean, you're talking about managing the economy. And more than 60% say they're doing a bad job at managing the economy. Corruption is at its highest. The high cost of living. I mean, this is all bread and butter issues.
This is bread and butter. This is you and I going to the kiosk or to the supermarket or to the mall to spend the money that we have worked for, and noticing that the prices have actually either stabilized where they were, which means they went up, stayed there, or they're actually going up by the day for some goods. So it's not something that Kenyans are just being, complaining for the sake of it. They are telling us what they are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. So that's why when they say, in terms of managing the economy, the government has done badly, they can tell it's something they feel in their pockets. They cannot buy luxurious goods like some people buy, especially the corrupt ones, because we have heard in the news that somebody just bought a car worth 8 million
or
using corruption, 24 million. And that brings me to the other issue of corruption, because that's why the last quarter of 2015, because we did the survey at the end of the year, from 12th November to 24th December, there were so many cases highlighted in the media on issues, corruptions, so many scandals, majorly the NYS scandal. And, there have been so many people named that have been alleged to have benefited from that. So that means that message is in the minds of Kenyans. So it makes it very easy for them to say, the government is doing badly in terms of corruption.
Okay, yeah, and it's interesting because, terrorism and insecurity are things that Kenyans face and know all too well, perhaps, a lot better than, our counterparts in the region, in Tanzania and Uganda, Ethiopia, if you take a look at the wider Eastern Africa region. But somehow at this point, insecurity, terrorism, all of these are at 1% in terms of, what Kenyans feel are the most serious problems that are facing them today. Do you find that interesting?
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, we have to say, yes, how many cases of terror attacks have we had in the last 6 months, or maybe the last quarter of 2015? There were very few, except the case which involved, I think Eladi. But that also tells you that Kenyans follow what is going on in the country. So depending on what is happening, they will actually react. And it is a poll like this that can actually tell you what they think, what they feel, their attitudes. So it captured the realities at the time, which is the essence of having a Sauti za Wananchi poll in the country. Because it then tells you what people think from time to time on various issues of governance.
All right, I know I ask you this all the time you're here, but how do we use this data? How does the president and his team and the government use this data? He's about to address the nation Thursday afternoon here in Kenya.
Two things.
What should this tell the government?
The president needs to know that this is the verdict of Kenyans, number one. I'm sure he will have some convincing facts or some information to convince Kenyans with on this particular issues especially. What he needs to bear in mind is that some will probably accept it, some will say that's fair enough, some will say we don't agree with you, and that's a democracy, but the truth will remain in the minds of Kenyans. They will be saying we are expecting much more for the remaining 2 years, 2016 and 2017. Higher expectations, especially depending on what he gives out, or in his speech tomorrow, he will be experiencing, or he will be faced with a situation where he needs to be very clear that in 2016 we are going to work extra hard when it comes to fighting corruption. We are going to ensure that not just sending away those civil servants who are corrupt, but empowering the EACC using whatever means possible to ensure that it's functional, because that's where the blame seems to be going, that the president cannot work or force the EACC to carry out its work.
Victor, you've been doing polls in the region for a number of years now. Is there a much higher expectation of Kenyans with this administration than with others before? You've been polling, you've been asking these questions year after year from one administration to the next. Does it just seem that way, or is it a case of this administration failing to win the hearts and minds? Because when they give those speeches, they talk about rural electrification, how many people have been connected to the grid. We talk about infrastructure, we talk about roads, we're talking about jobs, like you say, with the deputy president saying that yesterday. So which is it? Did we just have very high expectations of this administration? Or is there a disconnect between them saying, look at all these things we've done and let's go, you know, carrying the people with them?
Well, you can only have high expectations when somebody sets them. If I tell you to expect something from me, that's when my expectations go up. If you normalize the expectations, then they will be normal. So first of all, the government has set very high expectations in terms of telling Kenyans, we are going to implement the laptop project. We are going to have the ESSGR implemented. We are talking about a new curriculum by 2017, which may not be possible. There's so many things that the government pledged to do within the first 100 days. It was all colorful, but then none of these came to pass. Probably right now we know, yes, the SGR is on course, but other things, we are going to fight corruption, we are going to ensure we provide health. And if you look at our poll, you know, there are areas where Kenyans have actually given a fair rating of to the government. In terms of managing health, there is a significant number saying yes, that has been well done or somewhat well done compared to the rest. So Kenyans actually know what is going in this country, and the poll is a true reflection. If you're factual enough, you will see that it is a true reflection of what is actually happening in government.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks. And you've talked a little bit about some of the data. I haven't given all of that here because we'll have more of that, you know, here on KTN News at 9 p.m. And also, Victor Ateng will be joining us tomorrow. He'll be on News Center with Betty Okari. So please do stay tuned for that. It'll be our run-up to the coverage of the President's State of the Nation. Victor, as always, thank you very much for coming.
You're most welcome, Yvonne. Looking forward to being here tomorrow.